If an artificial intelligence ever unrolled the history of humanity, like a single, sprawling map, we would look like a genuinely strange species. Our claws are weak, our teeth are unremarkable, and we crumble easily in the face of cold and hunger. And yet, with nothing more than a story, we build cities, raise empires, and willingly lay down our lives for one another. So today, let's borrow that unfamiliar perspective and read the human past and present all over again. Hey there, welcome to Why Is That, the channel, where we question the things everyone takes for granted and dig into the answers together. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribing and hitting that like button really helps us out more than you know. Thanks for being here. Today we're looking at three things: what kind of creature humans appear to be through the eyes of an AI, what the great currents of human history really were, and what we are quietly turning into right now, in this very moment. By the end of this single video, the history you thought you understood will start to look completely different from a much higher vantage point. The first pattern an AI would notice is not strength, it's cooperation. Now picture this. Far back in deep time, somewhere in the middle of an open plain, a single human being is standing alone. Not as fast as a lion, not as strong as a bear, not as sharp-eyed as an eagle. On its own, this creature isn't all that impressive. But the moment 10 of them gather, then 100, and they all hear the same warning and believe in the same promise, the entire story changes. Humans invented a technology for connecting one another's minds. Language and symbols. First, they shared danger through words. Second, they divided up roles. Third, they began to believe in rules that weren't even visible. You take the front of the hunt today, I'll keep the fire tomorrow, and when the next season comes, we'll meet again by this river. These promises were never carved into stone, and yet they moved entire groups of people. To an AI, humans wouldn't simply look like clever animals. They'd look like a species that turns invisible promises into physical reality. You might be thinking, well, surely it was the big brain that made humans human. That sounds right, but an AI would probably see it slightly differently. More important than the size of the brain itself was the way those brains learned to connect to each other. A species of ordinary individuals sharing stories and cooperating travels, far further than a species of lonely geniuses. At the very starting point of human history, you don't find individual power. You find collective imagination. The next scene the AI would zoom in on is roughly 12,000 years ago. Humans stop chasing food across the landscape and start binding themselves to the land where food can grow. They plant seeds, wait out the seasons, and calculate the harvest. This wasn't just the moment farming began. It was closer to the moment. Humans began living inside time itself in a completely new way. In a hunting and gathering life, today is what matters. But farming forces you to calculate months ahead. When will the rains come? When will the river rise? How much grain do you need to store to make it through the winter? The moment humans put down roots in the soil, they also chain themselves to the future. First, surplus food appears. Second, storage becomes necessary. Third, whoever controls the storehouse quietly gains power. And right there, almost without anyone noticing, cities, taxes, social classes, and administration are born. It's almost absurd, isn't it? A choice meant to fill our stomachs. More reliably ended up making human life dramatically more complicated. Granaries reduced hunger, yes, but they also lengthened working hours, concentrated power, and sharpened the tools used to control other people's time. The fields gave us abundance, but in exchange, humans started syncing their daily rhythm not just to nature, but to the rules of society. And here's where things get genuinely wild. Humans start pulling memory itself outside of their bodies. Spoken words vanish, but written ones remain. Numbers fade in the mind, but records hold on. To an AI, the invention of writing would look like one of the most explosive turning points in human history. Because from that point on, each generation no longer had to start everything from scratch. Knowledge began stacking up like bricks. First, writing preserves memory. Second, Writing connects people across vast distances. Third, writing brings the thoughts of the dead back into the minds of the living. That is genuinely remarkable. A single human life is short, but recorded knowledge survives by leaping across generations. Our bodies stayed fragile, but our collective memory kept growing into something enormous. The history an AI would see may have less to do with muscle than with memory. Then comes another massive leap, the age of science and industry. Instead of simply fearing nature, humans begin reading its patterns, extracting laws and building machines, and then they reach for energy that the sun had been quietly storing underground for millions of years. Coal and oil were, quite literally, the savings account of an ancient sun. With that energy, humans started pushing through tasks their own muscles could never have managed. In barely 200 years, the world transformed. Travel times shrank, production exploded, cities swelled, and the population shot upward. Today, more than 8 billion people live on this planet. If an AI looked at this scene, it might summarize it like this. Humans didn't take over the world because they grew physically stronger. They reshaped the surface of an entire planet because they learned to bind energy and information together and cooperate at an enormous scale. So, are the heroes of history the great individuals? Heroes matter, of course, but an AI would probably take a slightly colder view. It would look past famous names and notice the larger patterns first. The flow of energy, the storage of information, the scale of cooperation. One person's decision can change a moment. But what truly tipped the balance was how many people a society could move in the same direction at once. Now, let's pull ourselves back into the present. Through an AI's eyes, what does today's human look like? Most likely, it would see the network before it sees the individual. A device that fits in your palm now contains the news, the map, the bank, the photo studio, the post office, the theater, and the marketplace all at once. An event on the other side of the planet becomes your emotion within seconds. A single sentence from one person can ignite the rage of millions almost instantly. In the past, what we lacked was information. Knowing more meant surviving better. But the situation has now flipped completely. Information is everywhere. What's running short is attention and trust. Information pours down on us like a heavy rainstorm, while the floor of our inner life keeps getting more slippery. Figuring out what matters, what's actually true, and what deserves to be held onto has become harder than ever. Around now, you might wonder, shouldn't more information automatically make us smarter? Not necessarily. The more information there is, the more crucial the filter becomes. When water is scarce, the problem is the water itself. When water is overflowing, the real problem is knowing which water is safe to drink. Modern humans are essentially in that second situation. We don't live in an age of knowing more. We live in an age of being exhausted by what to believe. And this is exactly where AI becomes the strangest mirror humanity has ever faced. Old machines replaced our muscles. They lifted heavier things, moved faster, and lasted longer. But today's AI is something different. It calculates, summarizes, translates, drafts, and even handles language itself. For the first time, humans have started outsourcing pieces of their own, thinking to something outside their bodies. That shift is convenient, honestly, almost stunningly so. But it comes with a price. The habit of finding things quickly starts to outweigh the patience of thinking things through. The skill of skimming and moving on starts to replace the slower work of reading deeply and digesting. And here's the thing. The real question isn't whether the tool itself is good or evil. The deeper question is how much of our thinking we hand over, and where exactly we draw the line and take responsibility ourselves. So if we had to compress how an AI sees the modern human into a single line, it might sound something like this. A species whose body is still fragile, but which built a vast collective intelligence through stories, records, and networks. And now a species that has placed yet another calculating mirror just outside that collective mind. Let's pull it all together. Through an AI's eyes, the great trunk of human history. splits into three branches: learning to harness more energy, learning to store more information, learning to cooperate at ever greater scales. The humans of the past compensated for fragile bodies through cooperation, captured time through farming and writing, and reshaped the rhythms of an entire planet through science and industry. And the humans of today are being tested in a world flooded with information, asked what they will choose to believe, and which judgments they'll keep firmly in their own hands. Try one small thing today. Just for a single day, in front of all the information rushing at you, pause. Even once, and ask yourself this: am I consuming information right now, or am I creating meaning? That one question, asked even occasionally, can quietly draw a sharp line between someone who lives through this era and someone who simply gets swept along by it. If there's a topic you're curious about, drop it in the comments. We'd love to cover it in a future video. Until next time, we'll keep turning the question marks hiding in your everyday life into exciting exclamation points. We hope your tomorrow is just a little bit clearer than today. This has been Why Is That?, where curiosity never sleeps.